In fourth and fifth grade, students start thinking about division with larger ranges of dividends and divisors and larger quotients than when they started in third grade. Just like those ranges of multiplication increase, the range that they're dealing with division increases along with that. And division seems to be one of those areas where a lot of students start to struggle maybe a little more than they have in the past. And a lot of that might be due to just the lack of understanding around what division is. So when we think about strategies for division, I think it's really important that the strategies, like all good strategies, are rooted in numeracy and number sense and developing connections to as many other concepts as we can. Like with some of the multiplication strategies that have been in this series, we're going to use another friendly number type strategy, thinking about partials. And this one is also going to be an over strategy, just like we looked at with multiplication. For this one, unlike the multiplication examples that we have done where we have used a ratio table to model that, we're going to model this with fraction equations. And I like modeling this strategy in this way because the inclusion of fractions in our model also helps to develop that fractional sense that students are developing in third, fourth, and fifth grade as well. And then in fifth grade, thinking about where students are going in sixth and seventh grade, and that algebraic thinking steps up, starting to model with equations in fifth grade, and sometimes even earlier. But with this, we'll start here. Can be a really great way to get students thinking about equations as a model, because equations are a great model that we can use. So 144 divided by 16. This is a division expression that students in fourth grade would have to deal with. And so we're going to look at how to think about that with an over strategy. And I think this is a great candidate for the over strategy because I notice that 144 is really close to 160. And the reason that I'm thinking that's important is because if I scale up 16 by 10, 16 times 10 is 160. So I want to think 160 and then work my way back. And so here's how that strategy looks using this fraction equation model. So the first thing that I want to do is rewrite my division as a fraction, because a fraction is just division. We can represent a fraction as division or division as a fraction. So 144 over 16. Now I know this is equivalent to whatever my quotient is, the quotient that we're looking for, but we certainly want it a little more clean, a little more friendly than this. Now, I'm going to set this equal to 160 over 16. Now, that of course isn't true. 160 over 16 is the same thing as 10, and I know this isn't 10. It's too much. I've got to subtract something from it. And here's how I'm going to think about it, and here's how this strategy works. Well, I know that something over 16 minus something over 16 would be something over 16. So this is how we sort of build the strategy and what it looks like. So to figure out what we have to subtract from 160 over 16 in order to get 144 over 16, I just have to think about the numerators. So what do I need to take away from 160 to get to 144? And in this case, it works out really well. It's 16. So now I know that this equation is true. And so if I can think about this equation, it'll help me think about what the quotient of 144 and 16 is. Well, 16 over 16 is just 1. And so my quotient is 10 minus 1, in this case, 9. So 144 divided by 16 is 9. Now, I'm going to play with this a little bit just to show how great this is, even if there is a remainder. In fifth grade, students have to start thinking about remainders as fractions. And so let's say this was maybe 143 instead of 144. If we were first thinking about 143 divided by 16 instead of thinking about 144 divided by 16. Well, now if I back up to this step and I just ask myself, 160 minus what would be 143? Well, that's just 17. And so now I'm thinking, well, my quotient is 10 minus 17 over 16, which is just 1 and 1 over 16. So if I can subtract 1 and 1 over 16 from 10, then I'll have my quotient. And if I set this up well to begin with, and I really do find that friendly number, this is always going to be a whole number, so this subtraction isn't going to be very difficult. If I take 1 away, that gives me 9, but then I got to take away an extra 1/16, and so that's going to be 8 and 15/16. So 143 divided by 16 would be 8 and 15/16. And so now we've just taken this strategy that we could start building in 4th grade, and we've made it work for an item that is aligned to 5th grade, where we're also dealing with fractional remainders. Here's another expression that we can use this strategy with. We've got a little bit larger numbers here just to show that this does scale up as the numbers scale up as well. So 3,152 divided by 8. I'm thinking about 8s, and I know that 8 times 4 is 32, and this is really close to 3,200. So I want to think about that 3,200. Again, I'm going to rewrite it at first as a fraction, and then I'm going to create my equation with my friendly number. 3,200 over 8, which I know is going to be 400. So again, friendly number to work with, minus something over 8 so that it can be equal to the expression that we started with. So it can be equal to this fraction here. So I just think 3,200 minus what gives me 3,152, and that would be 8. So if I can take away 48/8, which simplifies to 6, so I just take 6 away from that 400, and that gives me my quotient, 394. So now I know that 3,152 divided by 8 is 394. I can manipulate this a little bit to show what it looks like in 5th grade. So if it were 3,156, then we just have to change a couple pieces here, and we can find what that quotient is with its fractional remainder. So 3,156, I know that this is going to be now 44, because I need to subtract 44 from 3,200 in order to get 3,156. 44 over 8 will simplify to 5 and 4/8, or 5.5, but we could leave it at 5 and 4/8. So I'm just going to now subtract. I know 400 minus 5 is 395. Subtract that other half, 394, and 1/2 or 4/8. Either would be appropriate. So the quotient is 394.5. And so that is the friendly number over strategy applied to division in 4th grade without remainders, even in 5th grade with those fractional remainders, using this fraction equation model.